Hello, good afternoon. How are you today? So, today we are going to be getting back into Women Who Run with the Wolves Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Ph.D. And this next chapter 14, which is entitled La Selva Subterranea Initiation in the Underground Forest. It's huge. It's a huge chapter. So I think I'm gonna attack it. I'm gonna approach it in two parts, but we'll see how it goes. So I think we're gonna get through the third stage here. So let's dig in. La Selva Subterranea Initiation in the Underground Forest. The handless maiden. If a story is seed, then we are its soil. Just hearing the story allows us to experience it as though we ourselves were the heroine who either falters or wins out in the end. If we hear a story about a wolf, then afterward we rove about and know like a wolf for a time. If we hear a story about a dove finding her young at last, then for a time after, something moves behind our own feathered breasts. If it be a story of wresting the sacred pearl from beneath the claw of the ninth dragon, we feel exhausted afterward and satisfied. In a very real way, we are imprinted with knowing just by listening to the tale. True, right? Hey, cool gamer, welcome. Among Jungian, mother of pearls. Among Jungians, this is called participation mystique, a term borrowed from anthropologist Levi Bruhl, and it is used to mean a relationship wherein, quote, a person cannot distinguish themselves as separate from the object or the thing they behold, end quote. Among Freudians, it is called, quote, projective identification, end quote. Among anthropologists, it is sometimes called sympathetic magic. All these terms mean the ability of the mind to step away from its ego for a time and merge with another reality, that is, another way of comprehending, a different way of understanding. Among healers from my heritage, this means experiencing and learning ideas via a prayerful or non-ordinary state of mind and bringing the insights and knowledge one has gained in the circumstance back into consensual reality. The Handless Maiden is a remarkable story, one in which we find the toes of the old night religions peeking out from under the layers of the tale. The story is formed in such a way that listeners participate in the heroine's test of endurance, for the tale has such amplitude that it takes long to tell it, and even longer to absorb. Customarily, I teach this tale over 7 nights' time, and sometimes, depending on the listeners, over 7 weeks, and occasionally 7 months' time, spending 1 night, 1 week, or month for each labor in the story. And there is a reason for this. The story pulls us into a world that lies far below the roots of trees. From that perspective, we see that The Handless Maiden offers material for a woman's entire life process. It deals with most of the key journeys of a woman's psyche. Unlike other tales we have looked at in this work that speak to a specific task or a specific learning taking place over a few days or weeks' time, The Handless Maiden covers a many years long journey, the journey of a woman's entire lifetime. So this story is something special, and a good rhythm for assimilating it is to read it and sit with your muse, turning it part by part over a generous period of time. The Handless Maiden is about women's initiation into the underground forest through the rite of endurance. The word endurance sounds as though it means, quote, to continue without cessation, end quote. And while this is an occasional part of the tasks underlying the tale, the word endurance also means, quote, to harden, to make sturdy, to make robust, to strengthen, end quote. And this is the principal thrust of the tale, and the generative feature of a woman's long psychic life. We do not just go on to go on. Endurance means we are making something substantial. Bam! The teaching of endurance occurs all throughout nature. The pads of wolf pups' paws are soft as clay when the pups are born. It is only the ranging, the roaming, the treks on which their parents take them that toughen them up. Then they can climb and bound over sharp gravel, over stinging nettle, even over broken glass without being hurt. I have seen wolf mothers plunge their pups into the coldest streams imaginable, run until a pup is splay legged and can hardly keep up, and then run some more. They are toughening up the sweet little spirit, investing it with strength and resilience. In mythos, the teaching of endurance is one of the rites of the great wild mother, the wild woman archetype. It is her timeless ritual to make her offspring strong. It is she who toughens us up, makes us potent and enduring. And where does this learning take place? Where are these attributes acquired? La Selva Subterranea, the underground forest, the underworld of female knowing. It is a wild world that lives under this one, under the world perceived by ego. While there, we are infused with instinctive language and knowledge. From that vantage point, we understand what cannot be so easily understood from the point of view of the topside world. The maiden in this tale masters several descents. As she completes one round of descent and transformation, she plunges into yet another. These alchemical rounds are complete, each with a negredo, loss, rubedo, sacrifice, and albedo, coming of light, following one upon the other. The king and the king's mother each have a round themselves. All this descending and loss and finding and strengthening portrays women's lifelong initiation into the renewal of the wild. The handless maiden story is called, in different parts of the world, Silver Hands, or The Handless Bride, and The Orchard. Folklorists number more than 100 versions of the tale. The core of the literary version I've written here was given to me by my Aunt Magdalena, one of the great women, farmer/field workers of my young life. Other variations are found throughout Eastern and Middle Europe, but truth be told, the deep womanly experience underlying the tale is found anywhere there is a yearning for the wild mother. My Aunt Magdalena had a sly storytelling habit. She caught her listeners off guard by beginning a fairy tale with, quote, "This happened 10 years ago," end quote, and then proceeded to tell the tale from the medieval era, complete with knights, moats, and all. I love that. Or she'd say, quote, "Once upon a time, just last week," end quote. And then she'd tell a tale about a time before humans wore clothing. So here is the modern ancient handless maiden. Once upon a time, a few days ago, the man down the road still owned a large stone that ground the villagers' grain to flour. The miller had fallen on hard times and had nothing left but the great rough millstone in a shed, and the large flowering apple tree behind it. One day, as he carried his silver-lipped axe into the forest to cut the dead wood, a strange old man stepped from behind a tree. Quote, "There's no need for you to torture yourself by cleaving wood," end quote, wheedled the old man. Quote, "I shall dress you in riches if you will but give me what stands behind your mill," end quote. Quote, "What is there behind my mill but the flowering apple tree?" end quote, thought the miller, and agreed to the old man's bargain. Quote, "In 3 years' time, I'll come take what's mine," chortled the stranger, and he limped away, disappearing between the staves of the trees. The miller met his wife on the path. She had run from their house, apron flying, hair askew. "Husband, husband!" At the stroke of the hour, into the house came a finer clock upon the wall. Our rustic chairs were replaced by those hung in velvet. And the paltry cupboard abounds now with game. Our trunks and boxes are overflowing. Pray tell, how did this happen? And even at that moment, golden rings appeared on her fingers, and her hair was drawn up into a golden circlet. "Ah," said the miller, "Oh, ah," said the miller, looking in awe as his own doublet turned to satin. Doublet? Doublet? Let's find out. I don't know. Doublet. A man's short, close-fitting padded jacket, commonly worn from the 14th to the 17th century. Okay. All right.
Doublet.
Doublet. Okay. You know, sometimes they had then those like frilly things that were around their necks right here. Think Shakespeare. Cool. All right, a doublet. Okay, now I gotta find it. Oh, ah, said the miller, looking in awe as his own doublet turned into satin. Before his eyes, his wooden shoes, with the heels worn to nothing, so he walked tilted backward, they too turned into fine shoes. Well, it's from a stranger, he gasped. I came upon an old man in a dark frock coat in the forest, and he promised great wealth if I gave him what is behind our mill. Surely, wife, we can plant another apple tree. End quote. Oh, my husband, wailed the woman, and she looked as though she had been struck dead. The man in the black coat was the devil. Okay, so she wasn't excited. Okay. Oh, my husband, wailed the woman, and she looked as though she had been struck dead. The man in the black coat was the devil, and what stands behind the mill is a tree, yes, but our daughter is also there sweeping the yard with a willow broom. And so the parents stumbled home, weeping tears on all their finery. Their daughter stayed without husband for 3 years and had a temperament like the first sweet apples of spring. The day the devil came to fetch her, she bathed and put on a white gown and stood in a circle of chalk she'd drawn around herself. When the devil reached out to grab her, an unseen force threw him across the yard. The devil screamed, "She must not bathe any more, else I cannot come near her." The parents and the girl were terrified, and so some weeks went by, and the daughter did not bathe until her hair was matted, her fingernails like black crescents, her skin gray, her clothes darkened and stiff with dirt. Then, with the maiden every day more and more resembling a beast, the devil came again. But the girl wept and wept. Her tears ran through her fingers and down her arms, so much so that her dirty hands and arms became purest white and clean. The devil was enraged. "Chop off her hands, otherwise I cannot come near her." The father was horrified. "You want me to sever the hands of my own child?" The devil bellowed. "Everything here will die, including you, your wife, and all the fields for as far as you can see." The father was so frightened he obeyed, and begging his daughter's forgiveness, he began to sharpen his silver-lipped axe. The daughter submitted, saying, "I am your child. Do as you must." Wow. My door just creaked open. Hey, Dean. Hey, Mr. Hugh. Welcome in. Woo. Nothing like setting the mood. It's creaking more. It's windy. I have windows open. It's not supernatural. Okay. And as he did. Oh, and this he did. And in the end, no one could say who cried out in anguish the louder, the daughter or the father. Thus ended the girl's life, as she had known it. When the devil came again, the girl had cried so much the stumps that were left of her limbs were again clean, and the devil was again thrown across the yard when he attempted to seize her. Cursing in words that set small fires in the forest, he disappeared forever, for he had lost all claim to her. The father had aged 100 years, and his wife also. Like true people of the forest, they continued as best they could. The old father offered to keep his daughter in a castle of great beauty and with riches for life, but the daughter said she felt it more fitting she become a beggar girl and depend on the goodness of others for sustenance. And so she had her arms bound in clean gauze, and at daybreak she walked away from her life as she had known it. She walked and walked. High noon caused her sweat to streak the dirt on her face. The wind disheveled her hair until it was like a stork's nest of twigs all tangled this way and that. In the midst of the night she came to a royal orchard where the moon had put a gleam on all the fruit that hung from the trees. She could not enter because the orchard was surrounded by a moat, but she fell to her knees, for she was starved. A ghostly spirit in white appeared and shut one of the sluice gates so that the moat was emptied. The maiden walked among the pear trees, and somehow she knew that each perfect pear had been counted and numbered, and that they were guarded as well. Nevertheless, a bough bent itself low, its limb creaking, so she could reach the lovely fruit at its tip. She put her lips to the golden skin of the pear and ate while standing there in the moonlight, her arms bound in gauze, her hair afright, appearing like a mud woman, the handless maiden. Man, the symbolism, the sacrifices, the lessons. The gardener saw it all, but recognized the magic of the spirit who guarded the maiden, and did not interfere. After the girl finished eating the single pear, she withdrew across the moat and slept in the shelter of the wood. The next morning the king came to count his pears. He found one missing, and looking high and looking low, he could not find the vanished fruit. The gardener explained, "Last night 2 spirits drained the moat, entered the garden at high moon. The king said he would keep watch that night. At dark he came with his gardener and his magician, who knew how to speak with spirits. The 3 sat beneath the tree and watched. At midnight, man, I just got goosebumps up my neck. The 3 sat beneath the tree and watched. At midnight, the maiden came floating through the forest, her clothes dirty rags, her hair awry, her face streaked, her arms without hands, and the spirit in white beside her. They entered the orchard the same way as before. Again, a tree gracefully bent one of its boughs to within her reach, and she supped on the pear at its tip. Man, that made me feel emotional. The magician came close, but not too close. To them, but not too close, comma. To them and asked, "Are you of this world or not of this world?" And the girl answered, "I was once of the world, and yet I am not of this world." The king questioned the magician, "Is she human or spirit?" The magician answered that she was both. The king's heart leapt, and he rushed to her and cried, "I shall not forsake you. From this day forward I shall care for you." At his castle he had made for her a pair of silver hands, which were fastened to her arms, and so it was that the king married the handless maiden. In time, the king had to wage war in a far-off kingdom, and he asked his mother to care for his young queen, for he loved her with all his heart. "If she gives birth to a child, send me a message right away." The young queen gave birth to a happy babe, and the king's mother sent a messenger to the king telling him the good news. But on the way to the king, the messenger tried, and coming to a river, felt sleepier and finally fell entirely asleep by the river's edge. The devil came out from behind the tree and switched the message to say the queen had given birth to a child that was half dog. The king was horrified at the message, yet sent back the message saying to love the queen and care for her in this terrible time. The lad who ran with the message again came to the river, and feeling heavy as though he had eaten a feast, soon fell asleep by the side of the water, whereupon the devil again stepped out and changed the message to say, "Kill the queen and her child." Damn, Bean. The old mother was shaken by her son's command and sent a messenger to confirm. Back and forth the messengers ran, each one falling asleep at the river, and the devil changing messages that became increasingly terrible. The last being, keep the tongue and eyes of the queen to prove she has been killed. The old mother could not stand to kill the sweet young queen. Instead, she sacrificed a doe, took its tongue and eyes, and hid them away. Then she helped the young queen bind her infant to her breast, and veiling her, said she must flee for her life. The woman wept and kissed one another goodbye. The women wept and kissed one another goodbye. The young queen wandered till she came to the largest, wildest forest she had ever seen. She picked her way over and she picked her way over and through and around, trying to find a path. Near dark, the spirit in white, the same one as before, appeared and guided her to a poor inn run by kindly woods people. Another maiden in a white gown took the queen inside and knew her by name. The child was laid down. "How do you know I am a queen?" asked the maiden. "We who are of the forest follow these matters, my queen. Rest now." So the queen stayed 7 years at the inn and was happy with her child and her life. Her hands gradually grew back, first as little baby hands, pink as pearl, and then as little girl hands, and then finally as women's hands. Wow. Hey, thank you for the happy new month wish. I didn't see that's what you said. I was just excited to see you. During this time, the king returned from the war, and his old mother wept to him. "Why would you have me kill two innocents?" and displayed to him the eyes and the tongue. Hearing the terrible story, the king staggered and wept unconsolably. His mother saw his grief and told him these were the eyes and tongue of a doe, and that she had sent the queen and her child off into the forest. The king vowed to go without eating or drinking, and to travel as far as the sky is blue in order to find them. He searched for 7 years. His hands became black, his beard moldy brown like moss, his eyes red-rimmed and parched. During this time, he neither ate nor drank, but a force greater than he helped him live. At last he came to the inn kept by the woods people. The woman in white bade him enter, and he laid down so tired. The woman placed a veil over his face, and he slept. As he breathed the breath of deepest sleep, the veil billowed and gradually slipped from his face. He awakened to find a lovely woman and a beautiful child gazing down at him. "I am your wife, and this is your child." The king was willing to believe, but saw that the maiden had hands. "Through my travails, and yet my good care, my hands have grown back," said the maiden. And the woman in white brought the silver hands from a trunk where they'd been treasured. The king rose and embraced his queen and his child, and there was great joy in the forest that day. Wow, this is really moving. All the spirits and the dwellers of the inn had a fine repast. Afterward, the king and queen and baby returned to the old mother, held a second wedding, and had many more children, all of whom told this story to 100 others, who told this story to 100 others, just as you are one of the 100 others I am telling it to. The end. Dang. It's really good. The first stage. The bargain without knowing. In the first stage of the story, the susceptible and acquisitive miller makes a poor bargain with the devil. He thought to enrich himself, but too late realizes the price is going to be very, very high. He thought he was trading his apple tree for wealth, but instead he finds he has given his daughter to the devil. In archetypal psychology, we take all the elements of a fairy tale to be descriptions of the aspects in a single woman's psyche. So, regarding this tale, as women, we must ask ourselves here at the beginning, what poor bargain does every woman make? Though we might respond with different answers on different days, there is one answer that is constant to all women's lives. Though we hate to admit it, over and over again, the poorest bargain of our lives is the one we make when we forfeit our deep knowing life for one that is far more frail. When we give up our own teeth, our claws, our sense, our scent. When we surround our wilder natures when we surrender our wilder natures for a promise of something that seems rich but turns out to be hollow instead. Like the father in the tale, we make this bargain without realizing the sorrow, the pain, and the dislocation it will cause us. Boom. We can be smart in the ways of the world, and yet almost every mother's daughter, if given half a chance, chooses the poor bargain at first. The making of this awful bargain is a matter of enormous and meaningful paradox. Even though choosing poorly could be seen as a pathologically self destructive act, it far more often turns into a watershed event that brings vast opportunity to redevelop the power of the instinctive nature. Amen. In this respect, though there is loss and sadness, the poor bargain, like birth and death, constitutes a rather utilitarian step off the cliff planned by the self in order to bring a woman deep into her wilderness. A woman's initiation begins with the poor bargain she made long ago while still slumbering. By choosing whatever appealed to her as riches, she surrendered, in return, dominion over some and often every part of her passionate, creative, and an instinctive life. That female psychic slumber is a state approximating somnambulism. It does, right? Walking in a dream. During it, we walk, we talk, yet we are asleep. We love, we work, but our choices tell the truth about our condition. The voluptuous, the inquiring, the good and incendiary sides of our natures are not fully sentient. This is the state of the daughter in the tale. She is a lovely creature to behold, and innocent. Yet she could forever sweep the yard behind the mill, back and forth, and never develop knowing. Her metamorphosis has no metabolism. So the tale begins with the unintended but acute betrayal of the young feminine, of the innocent. It can be said that the father, who symbolizes the function of the psyche that is supposed to guide us in the outer world, is in fact very ignorant about how the outer world and the inner world work in tandem. When the fathering function of the psyche fails to have knowing about issues of soul, we are easily betrayed. The father does not realize one of the most basic things that mediates between the world of soul and the world of matter. That is, that many things that present themselves to us are not as they seem upon first contact. The initiation into this kind of knowing is the initiation that none of us wants, even though it is the one all of us sooner or later receive. So many tales, Beauty and the Beast, Bluebeard, Reynard the Fox, begin with the father endangering the daughter. But in a woman's psyche, even though the father bumbles into a lethal deal because he knows nothing of the dark side of the world or the unconscious, the horrible moment marks a dramatic beginning for her, the forthcoming consciousness and shrewdness. No sentient being in this world is allowed to remain innocent forever. In order for us to thrive, our own instinctive nature drives us to face the fact that things are not as they seem. The wild creative function pushes us to learn about the many states of being, perception, and knowing. These are the many conduits through which the wild woman speaks to us. Loss and betrayal are the first slippery steps of a long initiatory process that pitches us into La Selva Subterranea, the underground forest. There, sometimes, for the first time in our lives, we have a chance to cease walking into walls of our own making and learn to pass through them instead. That's funny. I had a thought similar to that today. While in modern society, a woman's loss of innocence is often ignored, in the underground forest, a woman who has lived through the demise of her innocence is seen as someone special, in part because she has been hurt, but much more so because she has gone on, and because she is working hard to understand, to peel back the layers of her perceptions and her defenses, to see what lies underneath. In that world, her loss of innocence is treated as a rite of passage. That she can now see more clearly is applauded. That she has endured and continues to learn gives her both status and honor. Making a poor bargain is not only representative of the psychology of young women, it holds true for women of any age who are without initiation or who are dangling in an incomplete initiation in these matters. How does any woman involve herself in such a bargain? The story opens with the symbol of the mill and the miller. Like them, the psyche is a grinder of ideas. It masticates concepts and breaks them down into usable nourishment. It takes in raw material in the form of ideas, feelings, thoughts, and perceptions, and breaks them open in a way that makes them usable for our nourishment. This psychic ability is often called processing. When we process, we sort through all the raw material in the psyche, all the things we've learned, heard, longed for, and felt during a period of time. We break these down into parts, asking, how shall I use this best? We use these processed ideas and energies to implement our most soulful tasks and to fund our various creative endeavors. In this way, a woman remains both sturdy and lively. But in the story, the mill is not milling. The psyche's miller is unemployed. This means nothing is being done with all the raw material that comes into our lives on a daily basis, and that no sense is being made of all the grains of knowing that blow into our faces from the world and from the underworld. If the miller has no work, the psyche has stopped nourishing itself in critically important ways. The milling of grains has to do with the creative urge. For whatever reason, the creative life of a woman's psyche is at a standstill. A woman who feels thusly senses that she is no longer fragrant with ideas, that she is not fired with invention, that she is not grinding finely to find the path of things. The mill is silenced. There appears to be a natural slumber that comes upon humans at certain times in their lives. From raising my own and from my work with the same group of gifted children over a period of years, I saw that this sleep seems to descend upon children at age 11 or thereabouts. That is when they begin to take acute measurements about how they compare with others. During this time, their eyes go from clear to hooded. And though they are always in motion like Mexican jumping beans, they are often dying of terminal terminal cool. Whether they are being too cool or too well behaved, in neither state are they responsive to what goes on deep inside, and a sleep gradually covers over their bright-eyed, responsive natures. Let us further imagine that during this time we are offered something for nothing, that somehow we have twisted ourselves around to believe that if we will remain asleep, something will accrue to us. Women know what this means. When a woman surrenders her instincts that tell her the right time to say yes and when to say no, when she gives up her insight, intuition, and other wildish traits, then she finds herself in situations that promised gold but ultimately give grief. Some women relinquish their art for a grotesque financial marriage, or give up their life's dream in order to be to be a too good wife, daughter, or girl, or surrender their true calling in order to lead what they hope will be a more acceptable, fulfilling, and especially more sanitary life. In these ways and others, excuse me, we lose our instincts. Instead of our lives being filled with possibility of enlightenment, we are covered over with a kind of endarkenment instead. Oh, dang, one second. I'm going to pause this for a second. All right. A kind of endarkenment instead. Our outer ability to see into the nature of things and our inner seeing are both snoring away, so that when the devil comes a knocking, we sleepwalk over to the door and let him in. The devil symbolizes the dark force of the psyche, the predator, who is who in this tale is not recognized for what he is. The devil is an archetypal bandit who needs, wants, sucks up light. Theoretically, if he were given light, that is, a life with the possibility of love and creativity, the devil would no longer be the devil. In this tale, the devil is present because the young girl's sweet light has attracted him. Her light is not just any light, but the light of a maiden's soul trapped in a somnambulistic state. Oh, what a tasty morsel! Her light glows with heartbreaking beauty, but she is unaware of her value. Such a light, whether it be the glow of a woman's creative life, her wild soul, her physical beauty, her intelligence, or her generosity, always attracts the predator. Such a light that is also unaware and unprotected is always the target. I worked with a woman who was quite taken advantage of by others, be they spouse, children, mother, father, or stranger. She was 40 years old and still at this bargain betrayal stage of inner development. By her sweetness, her warm and welcoming voice, her lovely manner, she not only attracted those who took away an ember from her, but so large a crowd gathered before her soulful fire that they blocked her from receiving any of its warmth herself. There's this saying, we've got to learn to stop lighting ourselves on fire to make others warm, or something to that effect. The poor bargain she had made was to never say no in order to be constantly or consistently loved. The predator of her own psyche offered her the gold of being loved if she would give up her instincts that said, enough is enough. She realized fully what she was doing to herself when she had a dream that she was on her hands and knees in a crowd, trying to reach through the forest of legs for a precious crown someone had thrown into a corner. The instinct, the instinctual layer of her psyche was pointing out that she had lost her sovereignty over her own life, and what it was going to be. Oh, and that it was going to be hands and knees work to get it back. To retrieve her crown, this woman had to reevaluate her time, her giving, her attentions to others. Boom. The flowering apple tree in the tale symbolizes a beauteous aspect of women, the side of our nature that has its roots sunk into the world of the wild mother, where it is nurtured from below. The tree is the archetypal symbol of individuation. It is considered immortal, for its seeds will live on. Its root system shelters and revivifies. It is home to an entire food chain of life. Like a woman, a tree also has its seasons and its stages of growth. And it has its winter, it has its spring. In the Northwoods apple orchards, farmers call their mares and their dogs girl, and their flowering fruit trees lady. The orchard trees are the young naked women of spring, the first nose. Ooh, my nose feels so itchy this second. As we used to say, the first nose, as we used to say. Of all the things that most meant spring, the fragrance of clustered fruit blossoms outranked the crazed robins jumping around doing triple gainers in the side yard, and outscored the new crops coming in like tiny flames of green fire and black dirt. Damn, that's awesome. I love that. I love how she said that. That's so cool. Also, there was a saying about apple trees: young in spring, bitter fruit. Other side, sweet as ice. So, young in spring, bitter fruit. Other side, sweet as ice. This meant the apple had a dual nature. In the late spring, it looked lovely and round, and as though drizzled with sunshine, yet it was too tart to eat. It would make all your nerves stand up and go awk, ack, awk, AWK. Hey, Code, welcome. This is very good. But later in the season, to bite into the apple was like breaking open sweet candy running with juice. The apple tree and the maiden are interchangeable symbols of the feminine self, and the fruit is a symbol of nourishment and maturation of our knowledge of that self. If our knowledge about the ways of our own soul is immature, we cannot be nourished from it, for the knowing is not yet ripe. As with apples, it takes time for maturation, and the roots must find their ground, and at least a season must pass, sometimes several. If the maiden soul sense remains untested, nothing more can occur in our lives. But if we can gain underworld roots, we can become mature, nourishing to soul, self, and psyche. The flowering apple tree is a metaphor for fecundity. Is that how you say it? Fecundity? Yes. So, like, abundance. All right, I don't know why. Is it fecundity? It's how to pronounce it.
Fecundity. Fecundity.
All right, fecundity. Fecundity. The ability to produce an abundance of offspring or new growth, fertility. Fecundity.
Fecundity.
I don't know why that word always intimidates me. Fecundity. I'm always like, I don't know how. Maybe this is the day that changes. Fecundity. Where you at? I'm at the bottom here, I think. No. Oh. It's right. Got to be in this one right here. Maturation. Damn, Bean. There it is. The flowering apple tree is a metaphor for fecundity, yes, but more so it signifies the densely sensual creative urge and the ripening of ideas. All these are the work of la curanderas, the root women who live deep in the crags of montañas, mountains, and the unconscious. They mine the deep unconscious there and deliver up the work to us. We work the work they give to us. And as a result, a potent fire, shrewd instincts, and deep knowing springs to life, and we develop and growth. Oh, excuse me. And we develop and grow in depth in both inner and outer worlds. Here we have a tree symbolizing the abundance of wild and free nature in a woman's psyche, and yet the value of this is not understood by the psyche. One could say the entire psyche is asleep to the vast possibilities of the feminine nature. When we speak of a woman's life in relationship to the symbol of the tree, we mean the feminine blossoming energy that belongs to us and that comes to us in cycles, ebbing and returning to us on a regular basis as psychic spring follows psychic winter. Without the renewal of this flowering impulse in our lives, hope is covered over, and the earth of our minds and hearts remains in an unmoving state. The flowering apple tree is our deep life. Man, I really think we are all coming into some awesome new cycles here. Get movement, flowing energy. It's good. We see the psyche's devastating underestimation of the value of the young elemental feminine. When the father says of the apple tree, quote, "Surely we can plant another," the psyche does not recognize its own creator goddess in the flowering tree embodiment. The young self is trading off without realizing her dearness or her role as root messenger for the wild mother. Yet it is this breach of knowing that causes the initiation of endurance to begin. The, the unemployed miller, down on his luck, had begun to chop wood. It is hard work to chop wood, is it not? There is much heaving and hauling. Yet this chopping of wood symbolizes vast psychic resources, the ability to provide energy for one's tasks, to develop one's ideas, to bring the dream, whatever it be, within reach, you know? So when the miller begins to chop away, we could say the psyche has begun to do the very hard work of bringing light and warmth to itself. Wow. I hope that was doing that for both me and Jay. But the poor ego is always looking for an easy way out. When the devil suggests he will relieve the miller of hard work in exchange for the light of the deep feminine, the ignorant miller agrees. We seal our own fates in this way, deep in the wintry parts of our mind. We are hardy stock and know there is no such thing as a work-free transformation. We know that we will have to burn to the ground in one way or another, and then sit right in the ashes of who we once thought we were, and go on from there. Bam, the phoenix. Dude. But another side of our natures, a part more desirous of languor, hopes it won't be so. Hopes the hard work can cease to slumber. Oh, hopes the hard work can cease so slumber can resume. When the predator comes along, we are already set up for him. We are relieved to imagine that maybe there is an easier way. When we shun the chopping of wood, the hands of the psyche will be chopped off instead. For without the psychic work, the psychic hands wither. But this desire for a bargain over hard work is so human and so common that it is amazing to find a person alive who has not made the compact. The choice is so unusual that if we were to give example after example of women or men wanting to quit the chopping of wood and have a more easy life, thus losing their hands, that is, their grasp on their own lives, well, we would be here a long time. For instance, a woman marries for wrong reasons and cuts off her creative life. A woman has one sexual preference and forces herself to another. A woman wants to go, and do a big something, and stays home and counts paper clips instead. A woman wants to live life, but saves little shreds of life as though they are string. A woman, a woman is her own person, yet gives an arm, a leg, or an eyeball away to every lover who comes down the pike. A woman flows with radiant creativity and invites her vampirish friends to a group siphon. A woman needs to go on with her life, and something in her says, no, being snared is being safe. This is the devil's, I'll give you this if you'll give me that, the bargain without knowing. So what was meant to be the nutritive and flowering tree of the psyche loses power, loses its blossoms, loses energy, is sold out, is forced into forfeiting its potential, not understanding the bargain it has made. The entire drama almost always begins and establishes its stronghold outside a woman's consciousness. Yet it must be emphasized that this is where everyone begins. In this tale, the father represents the outer world point of view, the collective ideal that pressures women to be wilted rather than wildish. Even so, there is no shame and no blame if you have given away the flowering boughs. Yes, you have suffered for it, no doubt. And you may have given it away for years, even for decades, but there is hope. The mother in the fairy tale announces to the entire psyche what has occurred. She says, "Wake up, see what you have done." And everybody wakes up so fast it hurts. But still, it is good news for the wishy washy mother of the psyche, the one that once helped to dilute and dull feeling function, has just awakened to the horrible meaning of the bargain. Now a woman's pain becomes conscious. When it is conscious, she can do something with it. She can use it to learn with, to grow strong with, to become a knowing woman. Over the long term, there will be even better news yet. That which has been given away can be reclaimed. It can be restored to its proper place in the psyche. You will see. Dang. This is exactly what is going on. Right? Welcome, Sarah. Awesome. Yeah, it feels pretty every time I'm getting into any of the readings. It seems like right the perfect time. I'm tempted to go through this stage by stage, like maybe a day at a time, because of the way she said that. Instead of just reading this in two parts like I initially intended. Because that's already so much awesomeness to take in. Dang. $51-minute. Oh my gosh, cool. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I might just, for the next, through all the stages, like every day, just do this tiny little bit. That's what I'm going to do. Oh my gosh, just like she recommends. Okay, so yeah, that's great. Look at that. That's great. Because too, I was kind of like all week thinking like, dang, this is going to be like a 6-hour stream. This chapter is like almost 100 pages. Oh my gosh. I love yous. And I'll probably go live again today with a different book. I think I might get into something new, something from Robert Sepper, or I'm not sure. I don't know yet. I should have run a poll. I should run a poll to see what people like. I'll like give some choices or something. But dang, happy Friday. Thanks for stopping in, everyone. I hope you have wonderful weekends. And that I'll see you soon. Hey, Code, what you got shaking? I'm going to message you. I'm going to message you right now. All right, dudes. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Mwah. Thank you so much.